I think we're probably live, and there we are. Okay, there we go. Hello, everyone. It's Illuminostic, and tonight I have some really important stuff to share with you guys. I think that this journey that I've been on lately with researching dopamine and flow state and glutamate and kind of putting together all of these connections, it's really yielding some important fruit, I think. And, it occurred to me just as I was sitting down to start this light stream that as rapidly evolving people, especially considering that our catalyst, what's driving our evolution, yeah, let's fucking go, is consciousness, which is compelled by what? Light, right? Literally, the fastest thing in the entire universe is driving the evolution of people that are choosing to evolve their consciousness. And so it hit me that I don't want to call it energetic, but our evolution in consciousness could very easily outpace our hardware, right? Luckily, the brain is highly malleable, and these substances that we take to catalyze our consciousness happen to, and how ridiculous of a coincidence is that, right? That the substances that catalyze our consciousness make it more plastic and malleable, and also give us more machinery to work with. I mean, if you can take a piece of information like that and still believe that nature is completely blindly evolving, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, um, but yeah, I mean, maybe that's just just a remarkably serendipitous coincidence. But for me, that kind of stuff really suggests there's some kind of intelligence inextricably intertwined with the very fabric of our existence and our universe. Um, but yeah, so we run the risk of, especially as we get older, of outpacing our hardware. And so, what we have to do if we're in this really accelerated modality of conscious development is learn to have a play a role consciously engineering our neurobiological, neurochemical, and to some extent neurophysiological environment, right? And that even includes engineering the biome in our brain. Uh, so it's just so hard to figure out where to start with this because there is so much that has come to light. Like every day, I'm digging up a new level, a new layer of understanding of how all this works. And it really does feel almost like destiny because so much of my earlier studies and work was really about this these underlying mechanisms of the neuroscience and the flow state. Um, for example, I started to notice that Aleister Crowley's work is sort of like a 19th century manual for flow state and dopamine management. Of course, there's no language about that in any of the writings, but he said things like pure will without lust of result is in every way perfect, right? Well, the best way to maximize your dopamine without having peaks and valleys is to get rid of the idea that you're doing something for a reward and you're doing the thing just for doing of the thing, right? And then today I uncovered a bit of research that really drove that point home again. And they were saying that the best way, and this is a no-brainer, really. I mean, this should be obviously the key to happiness. Um, this knowledge that there's a chemical foundation for this should almost be just like auxiliary, uh, ancillary information. Um, but still, it's worth having that the best way to maintain a very high but level, so solid baseline of dopamine is to be at least under the impression that you were on the right path. Okay, so this idea of discovering your true will and constraining every thought, every breath, every deed to the not the to the realization of that highest expression of that inner purpose, right? That when you live for that, you are going to maintain really high dopamine levels. And by the way, as it turns out, and you would assume this, dopamine and glutamate and dopamine, glutamate, um, well, in flow state, these things are all very, very closely intertwined, which, like I said, shouldn't be any surprise to anyone. Was Plato an incarnation of Hermes? I don't know that I think about it in those terms, really. I once, during an ayahuasca experience, I was shown this sort of reflection on the plane of pure consciousness of the zodiac. And it was basically a dial of archetypes, and there's 12 of them, and then the central emanating pure consciousness was in the center, like the spiritual sun or source that New Agey types like to talk about. Um, and so where you sit on that dial, sort of which direction you were emanated from going around this sphere, determines your archetype. And interestingly, Jung actually did that same those correspondences. He made like a dial that had his archetypes, and they're situated in congruence with the corresponding zodiacal sign. So I think that when you see these kind of archetypal consistencies, someone like Pythagoras, and myself, really. I mean, that's been remarkable for me. The more I read about Pythagoras, and I see, all of these ideas that I've had, it's, it's very. I've wondered if maybe I'm not the reincarnation of Pythagoras, honestly, but I think it's probably less of a stretch to just understand that there are archetypes in consciousness, and that there is a spectrum, right? So you may sit right in the center of the Promethean, Pythagoras, Lucifer, whatever, however you want to think about it, that archetype in consciousness. You may sit overlapping, that one and the next one, and so you have characteristics of both of these archetypes. Um, so, so to get back on the track though of this life in flow motion and pursuing higher consciousness in constant flow state, this is something that can be done, and it's something that I did for a number of years, and it was something that I did intuitively. And that's also interesting, because I've always been kind of a strong believer that we have a sense of inner purpose within us, that our perception of that may be occulted or hidden by cultural influence and indoctrination and trauma and all of these things that can sort of cause this detachment from our real true sense of purpose. And then that's why we have to go through all of this stuff that could be psychotherapy or ayahuasca or meditation or all of those things, in order to really just take our seat back in the driver's chair that we were always intended to be in. And so, in a way, it's unfortunate that we have to go through these processes in order to realign ourselves. I know it's cost me a lot of time, but that journey, when you find yourself, deep in the Amazon rainforest with, an interdimensional entourage, would you have found yourself having this extraordinary experience if it wasn't for these circumstances that compelled you to have to seek alignment again? So, no story without a conflict, I'm afraid. But the path to doing this, I think, is actually pretty intuitive, as I was saying, and it's something that anyone can do. It's within the reach of practically any person. Um, it's just it's this simple. If any change can be caused by the proper application of the proper kind and degree of force to the proper object through the proper medium. If you fail, some part of this has not been fulfilled, right? And the assumption is also that the object that we're trying to exert this change upon is capable of making that kind of change. So you can't make tin from mushrooms necessarily, although as technology advances, it's seeming more and more like we can make anything from mushrooms, more or less. But you get the point that I'm trying to make. What am I drinking? It's actually orange and lemon juice with panela, which is like unprocessed cane sugar from a tree right over there that is full of giant thorns. Um, but yeah, sometimes we mix it with watermelon. It's a little bit too tangy. Uh, but so, okay. What we're looking at doing basically is creating the right ratio of enzymes and precursors along with the correct microbiome in both the gut and brain. And then we are creating habits that are based around flow state triggers, right? And so there is a list of 22 prerequisites or triggers for entering flow state. Just like there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, I'm not going to speculate as to whether or not there is a connection there. But these triggers, to me, have always just seemed like essential components of the pursuit of happiness. And I've never understood how it is that people live their lives any other way. I I'm still a bit baffled by it. But and another way to think about this that I think is really powerful is that all of these triggers basically, it's really just about escaping the matrix. Like, to really, really boil it down and simplify it, you are cutting the tethers of culture, because Terence McKenna said culture is not your friend. And we are all trapped in these mind-forged manacles, beliefs, and it's bad enough that our parents were often misguided. In my case, it was a tragedy that I had the parents that I had, honestly, in terms of realizing my own potential in a relatively reasonable amount of time. You know what I mean? It was just not ideal circumstances for my development. And I think that's the case with a lot of us, Man, look at me having to like swallow all the resentment and recompose myself just at mentioning my parents, But that's we have these cultural influences that are extremely limiting and toxic that we have to overcome. And then we also have the microcosm of our personal experience that we have to deal with and overcome. By the way, this is one of the reasons that plant medicine and other psychedelics are such an essential part of this process, I think. We have so much to undo, we have so much to overcome, we have so much to repattern, and we have so little time to do it, that we definitely need the kind of assistance that is offered by compounds like psilocybin and ayahuasca and LSD. There's, really a very obvious, pragmatic, essential need and application for these things, and our culture has made most people sick, and so the necessity of this medicine and reconditioning is not that difficult to understand. So we'll just run through a few of them to just kind of get an overview of what does this look like. But and also the relationship between having some sort of pursuit of higher consciousness or spirituality, even a practice of self psychoanalysis can lead to flow state. Um, it is necessary that you have prolonged periods of concentration. Ideally, you would get up and not touch your phone, okay? Because it's the social media, uh, I don't know if I should call it a protocol, but the way that it's designed is going to wreak havoc on your dopamine baseline, right? So the last thing you want to do is take your homeostasis and scramble it first thing in the morning. This is not going to help you. What's going on, Misty? You don't want that. So, if possible, and you guys, like, this is the path to liberation, happiness, freedom, peak experiences that you could never have conceived were possible until they happen, right? So if you have to do some difficult juggling of your affairs in order to make this shit happen, I would say that it's probably even risk is essential. It's a flow trigger. So 90 to 120 minutes first thing in the morning of concentration. So, what I've been considering for myself, because I need to implement this stuff as rapidly as I can, right? I'm coming out of a long period of stagnation, physical illness. This has been the most trying 3 years of my life, I think, and it's still very difficult at this moment. I am implementing these things myself, as it should be. But so 90 to 120 minutes of focus. And so, typically I would play guitar at night, right? So I'm thinking the best way for me to focus my mind. And actually, you guys, pick up an instrument if you're serious about this stuff, because you can kill several birds with one stone working with music. Yeah, Rape, we'll talk about that in a second. Let me get through these flow triggers. Rape, it can be an amazing tool for this stuff. It depends on what type you're using. But let's get through this flow trigger stuff. So the extended period of concentration in the morning, and if you can put your exercise in there. I mean, this can be your 90 to 120 minutes of concentration, going for a jog first thing in the morning. Meditation, some combination of these activities, right? And so then autonomy. And I'm going in that order for a reason, actually, because, you have to make stepping stones out of this process. And getting your focus together before you try to liberate yourself from your 9 to 5 job, or start a new business, or determine what your true will is. You're going to want to address your capacity to concentrate and to be serene. But so autonomy, and this is another great example of where our society is engineered to limit our access to flow state, which is really just sort of a buzzword for higher states of consciousness, altered states of consciousness, for bringing down the filters in our mind and giving access to the greater consciousness. That's really what we're talking about. At the end of the day, this is just kind of like a hipster term for for the transcendental consciousness or whatever. And that autonomy, and this is going to be the most difficult thing for most of us, to escape from our job. I've recently discovered that I'm a Sigma male. I don't have every single characteristic. I've only recently heard of this, but watching a video on Sigma males, I was like, holy crap, that's actually a pretty apt description of me, right? So one of the characteristics that we have is that we don't care what anyone thinks of us, and that we will not acknowledge any hierarchy, right? So there are no laws, there are no bosses, there's no president, there's none of that shit makes any sense to me. Like, it's not just that I'm rebelling against it. I literally don't understand how people even think those things exist. You know what I mean? It just doesn't, I can't make sense out of it. And I think that that is essential if we are really to have a fully conscious populace, a demographic, even if it's only, as it is now, what do we represent? Like maybe the 3% or something, 10% if we're really lucky. Um, but that autonomy is, in my mind, absolutely essential. It's a sort of Gnostic anarchy, or gnosis-based anarchy. This is something I've believed since I was a child, that if we are able to reduce and eliminate, hopefully even, a lot of the cultural influences and the programming and indoctrination, what we're going to discover is that our natural state of mind, without that sort of corruption and corrosion, is actually a state of mind that is conducive to self-government. And in fact, I find people that are really awakened, people that have developed their consciousness, they are not, they don't need to be governed, and they will not even tolerate being governed. That is an absolutely essential part of this. You will never really have your true dignity, your true freedom, unless you have true autonomy. And this doesn't just mean detaching yourself from hierarchy and cultural validation. This actually means total and complete autonomy. So if you had any kind of religious indoctrination, or any sort of influence from that, you have to work to completely and totally eliminate any kind of doctrinal influence over your life. If you have political disposition, you have to go through the process of self-analysis, and you have to come up with like a set of imperatives that you feel are sort of the governing spirits or the governing bodies of your true identity. And then you have to reevaluate your perception of anything that has political connections, religious connotations, right? And then you have to start cutting the tethers, cutting the cords between you and all of those influences. So you are not free until you decide what you do with every moment of your day, right? And up until the last few years, I could say that of myself for 20 years. And lately it's just been more of a struggle with COVID, and all of the people are hesitant to travel, and the pot industry is where I worked, so that was kind of destroyed, the outlaw pot industry at least. So it's, but I'm still doing it. I don't have a boss, and I survive. But yeah, what I was saying is that we have to, until you are able to decide what you do with every minute of every day, you're not free. But you are also not free if you still have any kind of undue influence coming to bear on your consciousness in any way, shape, or form, from religious influence or political doctrines, political dogma. Those things must be eliminated completely. That is autonomy. And it's, are we in a simulation? Okay, so I will get to that, but the next element of this is that you must have risk. Your life cannot be safe all the time, and if your primary concern is your comfort, if you're scared, if you're one of these really fragile people, I've noticed a lot of people, when they feel like they've become spiritual, all of a sudden they have all these weird needs, and they sort of value themselves and put themselves on a pedestal based on their fragility and their neurosis, and it's like it makes them feel important to have things just exactly a certain way, or else they're just going to shatter. This is one of the worst, I think, influences of the sort of pop culture spirituality that we have, is that we're getting a lot of people like that. That's not going to fly. You're not going to be in flow state if that's how you are. You need to really be firm and strong and confident and fearless. So this whole like tendency to be extremely fragile and to actually think that that makes us somehow that's like a positive characteristic. I've got to work on that one. But risk is an essential element of being in flow state. You know, for myself, I was an outlaw. So I was always, tomorrow was never certain. There were no paychecks. Um, there's no health insurance. There's none of that stuff. It. But I saw a really great meme the other day where there was a lion in a cage that had security. He was going to get fed tomorrow. He had free health care, all of this stuff. And then there's another lion, free and beautiful. It looked way healthier than the other one, standing out in the Sahara or wherever, African plains. And it's like, which lion do you want to be? Um, for me, I'll take my chances with the alligators and whatnot. Uh, some element of risk. And I think that if you look at how all of this stuff works, the relationships between all of these things, they are synergistic to each other. Because once you start to extract yourself from your job and your religion and the influence of your culture, you're going to encounter risk, which in a sense is threatening, but it is also a catalyst to this complete and total freedom that is the ultimate objective of, the flow state lifestyle. Uh, so risk. Let's see, what's another one? Concentration, we talked about. Creativity. If you have no creative outlet, you're basically dead. It's always confused me that there are people that don't play any instruments, and I mean that with all due respect to people that aren't musicians. But I think that anyone that does not play an instrument, and I'm sorry, I'm not including drummers here because there's not enough going on there. When you're playing an instrument that has pitch, especially an instrument where you can make chords, so make at least 3 pitches simultaneously, you're working with a completely different animal because you have rhythm, you have melody, you have harmony, and the brain is forced to work really hard. It is far superior to meditation, to improvise on a sophisticated instrument like a piano or a guitar. And so you can actually kill several of these flow state triggers with one stone when it comes to making music. So that's an essential component. What else do we have here? Creativity, risk, autonomy. Um, all right, let's get to some other questions while I'm considering which one of these things to uh, talk about next. Pythagoras was indeed a beacon of light and wisdom. Pythagoras was really, as far as we can tell, the founder of the mysteries. It's, the rumor is the historical records, I guess, kind of stop with Pythagoras. There are indications that he went to Egypt and he studied with maybe in the school of the mysteries of Isis, or one of these other mystery schools in Egypt, and then he brought that knowledge back to Greece, and that's sort of why. I mean, I feel like we all kind of intuitively know that it came from Babylonian Egypt. The original emanations of the mystery schools. Okay, so are we in a simulation? I answer this question quite often, and I basically think it's irrelevant. I don't see what difference it makes. If our great questions are, where did we come from? What is our purpose? Where are we going? Is there life after death? All of this stuff, all of the big questions. Okay, all of these big questions, whether we're in a simulation or not, is totally irrelevant to that. Because if there are aliens that have made a supercomputer that can generate conscious beings that think they're real. That doesn't tell us where the aliens came from that built these computers. We still have the same chicken and the egg kind of questions that we had before. So are we in a simulation? I mean, I could quote Buckminster Fuller and say that, you know, metaphysics is basically the study of things that have no weight or mass, like thought. And since we now know that matter is, I'm actually paraphrasing Buckminster Fuller, but since we know that matter is mostly empty space, that means that all of reality is a metaphysical construct. According to the definition given to us of metaphysics by the scientific community, right? So there's a great paradox for us. But yeah, I mean, that's basically my opinion on that, that it doesn't matter, because it doesn't tell us anything about the real ultimate nature of reality or the real great truths. You're still at square one. You've accomplished nothing, even if we find the aliens outside, you know, hardwiring the mainframe or whatever. Not going to tell us anything important, really. You're still going to live and die, and that's all there is to that. Okay, so a sense of purpose. I can't believe that I got stuck at that spot, because this is really the fundamental thing about this flow state lifestyle is that my belief, you know, and I've said this a billion times on my channel, so I apologize if I'm being redundant for all of my regular viewers, but our crisis of purpose is why people are machine gunning schools. It's why people are, you know, just vapid, hollow, empty, embarrassing. It's why the Island Boys were like the most famous people on earth last year. You know, it's that crisis of purpose. And it seems to me that this crisis of purpose is something that is cultivated and encouraged by the people that control the media, particularly in the United States. Like, I've always felt that way, that the people that they make big stars are obviously not the most talented, amazing, moving people on earth at the time. They're actually the most, it's like putting makeup on a pig. They're the most glossy mediocrity that they can find, you know? It's really like that Led Zeppelin line, all that glitters is not gold. Something like that, that in order to be like really, really huge in the United States in entertainment, you actually have to be kind of bland and mediocre. If you're truly great, there's only an off chance that you're going to get famous. You'll probably have a cult following and do okay, but you know what I mean? It's well, the barrier to entry in mainstream entertainment is basically that you actually are very talented. Um, and so this crisis of purpose is really the main thing. And so whether you're looking at it from, you know, this Crowley influenced Western occult tradition, and you know, a lot of people don't like to think about it that way, but that is where it came from. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, it's not my fault. Don't shoot the messenger. But that's really the father of the Western occult. You know, all of these people that have echoed these things about higher self and a holy guardian angel, higher genius, all of this higher self stuff, that's where it all came from. So, but you know, to put that in like modern parlance, it's about finding your true will, your true purpose, and actually having some sort of connection with something higher than yourself, greater than yourself, that is outside of yourself. This is, you know, one of the mandates in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, that you have to have some kind of higher power, or else you're never going to make it. I think that the 13th step, which was LSD, which is actually how the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous got sober in the first place, reinstating that would probably make Alcoholics Anonymous a lot more successful, but we're digressing a little bit. By the way, you guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe. You can join my Patreon, and then you can join Secret Streams. By the way, you guys are having one tomorrow. We've been going through the 28th degree of the Masonic Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, Night of the Sun. Really, really interesting stuff. Also, if you want to make a one-time contribution, you can do so in the chat or the description. We really do appreciate it because times is hard, and we put a lot of work into this stuff. And YouTube is burying my content. It's not just that I don't get paid from YouTube or advertisers, but they're actually burying it, and it has affected my partner's accounts, her social media accounts, because Facebook is going in and analyzing who your devices are connected with a lot, and then if they find, anyways. So please do support us. We really appreciate it. So this crisis of purpose, right? You have to align yourself with some kind of sense of purpose. And another one of the triggers is deep embodiment, right? So you have to be committed to this 100%. You have to commit every breath, every thought, every deed to this purpose, and you have to do it without lust of result in order to maintain a solid baseline of dopamine so that you don't have this peak and valley experience and end up manic depressive and go nuts, right? So, I mean, I'm sure, you guys can see where this is going, and that it makes total, complete, and utter sense. I mean, everyone is basically trying to do this right now. The sad thing is that a lot of people that are succeeding, at least at liberating themselves from the worldly version of samsara, right, to escape the matrix, I guess, to use that terminology, because we have such vapid culture, it's often people that still have this lack of a purpose, and so they escape and maybe become famous, but then they're just sort of amplifying this purposeless and making it a beacon of purposelessness for, the zombie masses to kind of follow nowhere around in circles, gobbling, Xanax, and so much that the oceans are testing positive for benzodiazepines. We really are in a crisis, you guys, and this really is the way out. Pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is something that we associate with psychedelics and with higher states of consciousness, in the sense that no matter what tradition you look at, whether you're looking at New Age housewives or shamans in the jungle, there is a belief that if you've elevated your consciousness, you can access capacities of consciousness that are paranormal, so to speak, right? You can remote view, you can experience telepathy, you can have precognitions, and I have experienced at least two of those things unquestionably in these altered states. And in fact, it's really, really common, and there is plenty of it in the anthropological record. If you're looking at ayahuasca, like the old ethnobotany books by Richard Evans Schultes and Wade Davis, and I'm sure Terrence McKenna, I can't recall right off the top of my head, but I'm sure he mentioned this kind of thing. So where I'm going with that, and this is extremely important as well, the pattern recognition and the increased intuition is actually an asset to your ability to execute tasks. It strengthens your skills. People that get into flow state skiing or playing guitar or doing anything, Mike Tyson boxing, and he's punching people, and they're literally a 400-pound guy is floating unconscious across the ring because he's being, and you could see his form was like a ballerina or something, like a murder ballerina. Just absolutely incredible feats are accomplished by people that are in flow state. Group flow state even happens. But the part of the reason and the connection that I'm making is between enhanced pattern recognition and intuition. You enhance your pattern recognition, that's just another way of saying that you have strengthened your intuition. And so this means that your creative capacity, whether you're doing art or music or whatever, pattern and variation and repetition are the fundamental constituent elements of any kind of creative endeavor, right? So, are you with me? Let me look at the chat. Let's take a little diversion and see. Rape thoughts. I mean, I make rape. We actually have down the street the second oldest sabo tree. in Ecuador. It's massive and incredible. In fact, I'm putting out a video probably tomorrow or Monday that's going to feature a lot of the natural landmarks from around where we're having our retreats. I don't think I've plugged them yet, so I'll do that now. We are still doing ayahuasca, San Pedro, changa, and then also just medicinal plants from the jungle and edible plants from the jungle, cultural excursions, interactions with wildlife, and just viewing. But sometimes the tapirs will come right up to us and let us pet them and stuff. So we're doing that only until October. So if you are going to come, we only have 4 or 5 rooms. Some of the periods are already full. So make your deposit before it's too late, because I'm only going to do this for a couple more months and then I may never do it again. I probably will come to the United States and do a few rounds, but I think my focus is better invested elsewhere. Although I will give it my all for the rest of the period that I'm here. And it really is amazing to be here, with all the monkeys and just yesterday, I think we went floating around in Paikawe Lagoon with the caiman and the spider monkeys swinging around and the giant paiche fish around the canoe. It's a pretty extraordinary experience. I'm also teaching ritual magic, hermetic style. So join us for that if you would like. So the rape, the sabo tree is, I guess, what put me on that tangent. The sabo is really ancient. We're using pieces of it as the ash, which is something that it is traditionally used. And then we use bobinsana ash as well, that has been mixed together with the mapacho tobacco, of course. And then we have a whole host of other plants. We might use Charlie Pongo with the ayahuasca. It's really ideal to use some sungus tree, but we don't have that here. It's in Brazil, and we may have it, but I haven't figured out what the Quechua name for it is yet. So still working on that one. Or one of my favorites is the Wilca rape that we make. So it's a seed that contains 3 different forms of DMT, along with a whole host of other psychoactive and non-psychoactive medicinal constituents. And so it's very similar to Yopo. We add that to our rape. So I don't know, it just says, you're asking rape thoughts. It's amazing medicine for different purposes. I mean, but there's so many different variations on it, that it's difficult to just talk about that. But Murici is great for connecting with masculine energy and focusing the mind, meditating. Our Wilca rape is going to enhance your intuition and put you in deep reflective state, let's say. It's pretty psychoactive. So yeah, I mean, it depends on, don't abuse it. I see a lot of people start taking rape and they're like 3 or 4 times a day. You're going to burn holes in your nose. It's not, these things are medicine, but they're not meant to be used habitually. People confuse marijuana, like it won't kill you. It's relatively non-addictive. So that means you can just smoke it all day and there won't be an ill effect. That's not what medicinal means, right? Sacred can almost, when it comes to plants, one interpretation of it that is fair is poisonous to some extent. So, I mean, this should be common knowledge and common sense at this point, but, just don't overuse these things. Scared? Don't be scared. Watch my last live stream on Mastering Fear if you're scared. Did I see any other questions? Yeah, I mean, if you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Unpredictability, I did miss that one, and complexity. Back to Crowley again, he said the worst mistake a man can make is to set an attainable goal. And so in order to achieve flow state, having a goal that is just outside of your actual capabilities to achieve it is essential. And being a musician, that's what it is. That's, unless you're someone that's content to just play campfire medicine songs with 2 chords and strumming patterns that are very simple, and that's cool. That's not me. You know, but and I wouldn't take that approach. I think if you're going to do anything, you should always be, seeking to improve yourself and your abilities. But yeah, so if you really set out to master an instrument, you'll find that that is an undefinable thing. There is no end goal to attain. So again, when you're talking about trying to enter into flow state and setting up activities and behaviors that are conducive to entering into that type of modality of consciousness, um, mastering like the guitar, for example, it's not an attainable goal. So it fits so many of the prerequisites. Complexity is another trigger, right? It's extremely complex. It can be to play the guitar, to understand chord theory and rhythm. And then if you're an electric guitarist, you also have all these effects and EQ and knobs everywhere and listening. If you're in a band, listening to all these other instruments, so many relationships to process at once. And I'm speaking specifically about highly improvisational music, because if you're playing music where you're just playing the album exactly the same way over and over again, you might as well just stop and not even play. I mean, there's a certain school of thinking where people really value that, and they think that if you're, really good musician, you'll be able to just go and recreate your album exactly note for note. Boomers are like that, all of them, all 60-year-old men that are into classic rock, all of them think that there's nothing higher than playing your simple pentatonic solo from 1972 the same exact way every note for the rest of your life, every night for the rest of your life. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here because I hate it. Sorry to use such strong language, but I do. I absolutely hate that. And I suffered a lot of ridicule as a person that refused to play anything the same way twice. But the point is that if you are trying to master an instrument, it's there's no end point. It just keeps going forever. And then also, it's a great choice because as you get older, your definition of mastery can change, so that even as your physical capacities might lessen, you are able to still pursue mastery in a different context. So pick up an instrument if you don't already play one. Novelty and avoiding predictability. As Terence McKenna said, monotony, monotheism, and monogamy. I'm not so sure that monogamy is so bad. It depends on your partner, I suppose. If they're, a static person that's not evolving with you, then sure. But monotony, right? The thing is, again, these things are all inextricably intertwined and connected, because if you get your autonomy and you are pursuing creativity in accordance with a higher purpose, your life is not going to be monotonous. So it's like once you have this ball rolling, it's going to just pick up all these other elements on its own. As long as you get any one of these things moving, it is going to accentuate all of the rest of these things just by the nature of the movement that's inherent in these things. Right on. Thank you, Mitchell. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to have discovered this topic, because this is really, I've been thinking for years, like, how can I really take all of these experiences that I've had over the years and all of the craziness of it, and use that to actually just absolutely destroy all the things that I hate in the world, and to really help people and lift them up too, because my experience of this, of being completely free my entire life, and having this autonomy and free thinking and the sort of depth that I experienced from just being in those circumstances, and not being afraid, fearlessness to just go and do whatever. Um, I wanted to share that with people somehow, but it's been difficult for me to figure out how to structure, and I don't want to be redundant. I don't want to just repeat all the things that Terence McKenna said, and, so discovering this framework, and in conjunction with plant medicine and an understanding of the neurobiology and neurochemistry, and sort of being able to wrap all this together and really create a system of mastery out of it, It really feels like a blessing, and it's a convergence of so many circumstances and so many years of trials and tribulation that, I mean, I hope you guys get some benefit from this and enjoy hearing it. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've made my point. I don't know what else to say about that, except that group group flow is the next level, and this is something that I've been saying for many years, that one of the main reasons for us to evolve our consciousness and to develop things like telepathy and this sort of unified will and a shared purpose is that you're really unstoppable. Strength is amplified exponentially when you have people that are collaborating, and so learning to get into flow state as individuals and then connecting that as a culture, as a subculture, is where our real power is going to come from. And so, if we all commit to these methods, and really, you have no excuse for uh, ignorance in this period of humanity. And I think that any determined person can find the information that they need about any subject. And social media has really distracted us from the real potential and utility that the internet offers. I mean, I remember when, my God, you know what? The first time that I ever used the internet uh, was to send my first email to Terrence McKenna, and he actually responded. So the first email that I exchange I ever had was with Terrence McKenna. Isn't that crazy? Um, and actually, though, the reason that we had gone to get on the computer at all in my friend's great room, his dad was the CEO of ExxonMobil. Straight up elite, man. That's who I lived around in Washington, D.C. when I was a kid. People like that. And it was the South Park uh, pilot of Jesus and Santa Claus boxing, beating the shit out of each other. So he wanted to show me that, and then for some reason I mentioned that Terrence was speaking in Mexico, and he said, "Why don't you shoot him an email?" And I'm like, "What the fuck is an email?" I guess that would have been 1996 or 97. I was like 16 or 17. Um, but yeah, you guys, and I think that it's not difficult uh, to see. Earlier I was talking about how it seems almost too perfect that psychedelics have the ability to catalyze our consciousness, but also to update our hardware, right? To actually um, change our neurophysiology, right? People that drink ayahuasca, their prefrontal cortex is shaped differently than other people. I can't remember how much use it requires, but it's not really a ton. But it is actually like pretty dramatically different shape. Um, but aside from actually, molding your brain into like a triangle instead of a blob or whatever, uh, which is what it basically does. The sides kind of flatten out and narrow, like your brain gets a faux hawk or something. Uh, but the neurogenesis and the neuroplasticity, we're talking about structural improvements in the brain that are conferred by ingesting these substances that create a necessity for you to have upgraded hardware. It's truly mind-blowing, uh, and it is real. And as I said, I think that the structural changes in the brain are probably necessary because we're confronted with ayahuasca visions, DMT visions that are so far beyond our normal cognitive load. Like we don't have language for a lot of the stuff that people perceive in the DMT realm, because we live in a 4D world, 3D world, 4D, whatever, but you know, you're watching things happen in 11 dimensions. You know what I mean? And I think that the brain has to actually make structural compensations. Consciousness is forced to expand just to accommodate these perceptions, right? Um, I think it's also really interesting that, you know, psychedelics dilate the pupils, of course, which, you know, why does that happen? Why is your aperture, you know, increasing to let more light in? I think the idea that our consciousness contains a sort of governor, you know, some sort of, how did Aldous Huxley called it, a reducing valve? Because there's just too much sensory input, right? So I think the fact that our pupils have to dilate is good evidence that what's actually happening is that we are expanding the frequency range of perceptible light. So I think that what I'm saying is this pupillary mydriasis, which is the technical term for expanded pupils, the window of the soul too. Your soul is expanding, so your pupils are expanding. But so normally your pupils dilate in order to take in a greater quantity of light, and under psychedelics, they're expanding, dilating in order to take in different qualities of light. So a broader spectrum of information. Okay, so I haven't seen any questions. I do have an acoustic guitar sitting beside me, and it's only 9 o'clock. So if any of you guys came to ask me to play stuff, which I've been doing every night lately, I'm totally down for that. What we've been doing, by the way, is people can request anything, and if I at least know the song well enough that I have an idea of the rhythm and the melody for the lyrics, I'll try to play it no matter what it is. Last night, people were requesting like Led Zeppelin, and that I would never ever try to sing otherwise. So it's interesting for me to put myself on the spot and try to force myself out of my comfort zone, playing music on the internet that I've never played before, and may well be totally out of my vocal range. So questions, requests, otherwise I am going to go and edit videos or something. I have a terrible lag though, so I have to sit here and wait and give you guys a chance to respond. Some powerful shit in this light stream, man. If you guys take this stuff to heart, if you're not already living it, there's absolutely no question that it doesn't matter what your problem is. This stuff is the answer. Conscious relationship with dopamine and glutamate, which is not that difficult. L-dopa, what is the plant called? Mucuna. You just take red velvet bean seeds. I think it's mucuna. And lysine. Because glutathione. Oh, I didn't talk much about that either, did I? Okay, so dopamine and glutamate have a very, they're very much interdependent. And I think I may have given some misinformation in one of my recent streams about this, because I said that dopamine is a precursor to glutamate. And someone who happens to know a lot about neurochemistry commented that that couldn't happen because dopamine is an aromatic and couldn't convert into this other type of chemical. And so I did a bunch of research. Definitely the leading flow state guy said this in one of his videos, but I think the guy that commented was correct that dopamine is not actually a precursor to glutathione or the other glutamate precursor, but it does play an essential role in glutamate regulation. which is extremely important because glutamate is the main neurotransmitter that causes excitatory neurons to fire, basically, which means that it is absolutely essential for clear cognition, rapid cognition, memory, and it also protects the brain against degradation from oxidization and all of these other kind of things. And so this idea of using supplements, diets, plant medicine, right? And then engineering your behaviors to maximize your flow state, your access to flow state. You know, this is the path to becoming the people that we were born to be. It is absolutely effective, and I mean, I'm not even selling anything yet, but you know what I mean. So I'm saying, like, I'm not trying to sell you a product here. I do have a course that I'm working on about this stuff. But at the moment, I'm just giving you this information because I believe in it. You know what I mean? You can trust that, and do your own research. A lot of people seem to think that DYOR is something that only idiots do these days. I've seen a lot of indications of that in social media. It's not true. It's good to educate yourself, and you are capable of it. If you attempt self-education and come away believing that the earth is flat, you may want to find someone else to do your research for you. But otherwise, I think you're probably qualified. So I don't know, you guys, if nobody has any questions or music requests, I think we've pretty much covered it. You know, it's crazy though. I will say this, that, looking at a lot of the flow state triggers, it's basically all of the things people told me I was doing wrong in life, and that, high risk, engaging in activities that are high consequence, high risk, living for your highest purpose and being ideological. You know what I mean? Like, all of the stuff that leads to this pinnacle state, peak state, people will ridicule you for trying to structure your life. It's not as bad now, I don't think. But certainly I still do hear a lot from people. I drink medicine with people that are in their mid-20s, and just a few months ago, a girl at a San Pedro ceremony asked if she could speak with me alone, and we went over and sat on a rock, and she said, the pressures of putting on appearances for people, and as a thoroughly Sigma male, I guess I didn't even understand what the hell she meant at first. I thought she meant that she was tired of putting on makeup, and I almost said, well, then just don't bother with makeup. I'm sure you look fine without it. I just didn't know. Like, what do you mean putting on appearances? Oh, you care what people think. Shit, don't do that. Of course, I'm being funny and kind of exaggerating, but it still is an issue for people, I guess, is the long and short of that. I empathize, I really do. I mean, that's one thing about being me that I just have never had to deal with caring at all what anyone else thinks at all. Not my parents, and not anyone. I don't. Your thoughts are your burden. It's not. It has nothing to do with me. Well, play what? Play One by Metallica? are the words? I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true or a dream. Deep down inside I feel this scream. This terrible silence stops me. Now that the war is through with me, I'm waking up, I cannot see that there's not much left of me. I haven't played that since I was 15 years old, so have to excuse me if I don't recall it exactly. What's the other part? Yeah. Something like that. I don't think that's what you meant somehow. Play one, but I did. I played one. Anything else, guys? Because seriously, I'm gonna go for real this time, I think, and go try to get into flow state. Keep your eyes out for videos that are coming up. There's gonna be some cool stuff. The other day I was out in the jungle and this tapir, which is kind of like an elephant rhino, came right up to me, and I had my camera this time, so I got some good 4K video of this thing like probing the camera with its like weird snout, and then maybe 30 feet away I found myself in a rainstorm of squirrel monkeys. There's a troop of maybe 40 or 50 of them, and they were just like they'll drop their monkeys, so they're super confident. They're in flow all the time. Tool, okay. Yeah, monkeys are in flow all the time, so so they'll drop from like really high, and then they hit, in the jungle there are these massive leaves everywhere, so they'll hit these giant leaves like 30 miles an hour, plap. So you hear this like loud slapping sound just all over, like peppering all around you when the squirrel monkeys, they're not tame, but they're used to people feeding them a little bit. So I think that's what's going on there. They won't come like right, I can't touch them, you know what I mean? But they'll, like, you'll see in the video, they'll put their face like right in the camera, like right, they'll touch it, you know what I mean? And probably trying to steal it, really. Squirrel monkeys aren't as bad. The capuchins in towns will straight up rob you. They'll stick their hands in their pockets. I've had lighter monkey, which is the alpha capuchin, will just take things and then like snarl and snap at you. And his canines are probably 1 3/4 inches long, built like a pit bull. Just, you're not, if he takes something, you're not getting it back. In fact, I got my first really truly viral video, like over 20 million views on TikTok, because of that monkey last year. He's the only non-human animal to cook food, which isn't true now because the entire troop has learned to do it. But he'll drop down into stores and steal lighters and steal them from people, and then he burns his fur and he eats it. And I got that on video, and that's why his name is Lighter Monkey. But yeah, Lighter Monkey the capuchins, they're nothing nice. Another hilarious video that I have on TikTok right now, it's going viral right now, I think, actually. Last time I looked, it was like 4,000 or 5,000 views. I just posted it this morning. This is crazy. These monkeys have superstitions, apparently. I'm almost certain of this because there's no other explanation for it. If they have a red onion, they'll break it open and they rub it all over their fur, and it's insect repellent, I think. I mean, that's the only logic. They don't eat them. They just rub it all over their bodies. So, but the weird part is that when they get a hold of an onion, they look for a human lap to jump in before they rub it on their bodies. So all I can assume is that they think that if they're not in a human lap when they're rubbing the onions on themselves, that they don't work. because they, without fail. So there was a guy here a month ago, I guess, and I gave him an onion and told him to go sit on the park bench. I'd never seen this happen before, but first lighter monkey comes and he gets in his lap and he starts rubbing the onion, and then another monkey comes and another monkey comes and another monkey comes. And so by the time, I mean, in a matter of like maybe a minute and a half, the video is only a minute and a half long, there are 7 or 8 monkeys and they piled themselves up. So he has this giant writhing, pissing, and for some reason they're peeing all over each other, right? So he's like sitting there in this bench with 7 capuchin monkeys piled up, peeing and wiping onion everywhere and writhing all around. It's one of the craziest goddamn things I've ever seen in my entire life. I would put a link. Actually, I think the video is on my channel and you can find it in my shorts. So if you haven't seen that one, you probably want to check it out. Tool. I think that's 46 and 2. How does it start with like the... My shadow shedding skin, I've been picking my scabs again. Yeah, I don't really know that one that well. I definitely know the guitar riff. Or Schism. Or is it here? Enema. That's it. That's it. I think that's the main riff, at least. Let's see. What other tool do I know? Shadow just behind me, shrouding every step I take, making every promise empty, pointing every finger at me, waiting like a stalking butler, who upon the finger rests. Murder now, the pattern must we, just because the sun has come. Jesus, won't you fucking whistle something about the past and done? Jesus, won't you fucking whistle something but the past and done? Why? No, low that time. Why can't we not be sober? I just want to start this over. Why can't we sleep forever? Just want to start this over. I am just a worthless liar. I am just an imbecile. I will only complicate you. Trust in me and fall as well. I will find a center in you. I will chew it up and leave. to elevate you, just enough to bring you down. Mother Mary, won't you whisper something about the past and done? Mother Mary, won't you whisper something about the past and done? Why can't we not be sober? I just want to start this over. Why can't we sleep forever? I just want to start this over now. What goes next? I am just a worthless liar. I am just an imbecile. I will only complicate you. Trust in me and fall as well. I will find a center in you. I will chew it up and leave. Trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. Why can't we not be sober? I just want to start this over. Why can't we sleep forever? I just want to start this over now. I want what I want. 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 Yeah, well, that's the mother-in-law's trying to sleep version. Replace smoking with exercise. Any tips for, yeah, increased dopamine? I mean, really, any addictive behavior that you're engaging in is going to be about dopamine. Which isn't to say that dopamine is the enemy, but dopamine regulation is the liberator, for sure. And one of the things that you can do to start sort of detaching yourself from your cannabis teat is to watch out for layering dopamine. So layering is when, like, you have an activity that you really enjoy, which might be playing the guitar, and I used to almost insist that I got stoned before I tried to be creative with the guitar. I still see value in that occasionally, but I think I probably lost a lot of time with this belief that it was essential. And so, the first thing to do is to start smoking guitar or playing guitar, smoking guitar, start smoking guitar. Yes, smoke the guitar. But what I'm meaning to say is don't do both things at the same time, or whatever activity you combine with marijuana that you enjoy, like, that old bit from Jon Stewart on that movie with Dave Chappelle, where he's like, have you ever looked at the stars, man? Have you ever done it high, man? That whole thing. Like, start doing those things without getting high. And so, taking a layer off first will actually help. And then you have to find other ways to get that dopamine fix. And I think that when you replace heavy cannabis use with dopamine producing activities, you're going to gain in other areas to such an extent that once you get the ball rolling, it will be really easy to, get reward from not smoking cannabis. And so now you have sort of reconditioned your dopamine regulatory system to actually give you a reward for not smoking pot. Um, Probably easier than it sounds, you know. I mean, luckily, like marijuana, I've had to kick opiates a couple of times in my life, and that is fucked up. I wouldn't wish that on. I would wish it on my worst enemy. I guess I'm vindictive enough to do that probably, but not on any decent person. Um, you know. Uh, so I mean, it's marijuana is not that terrible of a thing to have to stop doing. And that's another thing that I would say is that don't try to cut down, just quit cold turkey. Um, and the real culprit behind any addiction or any addictive behavior is some sort of trauma. Uh, the old ideas about addiction, luckily, are being cast out the window, and the reality, if you can just back off the pot enough to deal with the trauma, to figure out what it is, whether that be through ayahuasca or psychotherapy or whatever it is you got to do, um, later on in life, you may actually be able to be a normal pot smoker. you know, this is something that I've proven to myself with other much more addictive compounds. That when I was much younger, I definitely I never really got addicted to any one particular thing. I mean, I did get physically addicted to opiates, but that was more of a matter of physical problems resulting in addiction, um, physical addiction. But I definitely did way too many drugs way too often for a long time. And what I discovered is that once I had really worked through most of those layers of trauma, I actually could use drugs like a normal person and not act like a addicted lunatic. So, that's the real truth, that you can recondition your brain and deal with these traumas at their root level, and you can have a normal life, no matter what your issue is. And I think that's really an essential thing for us to come to terms with, because a lot of our thoughts surrounding addiction are just so wildly incorrect and actually destructive. Um, like I got ran out of an AA meeting for suggesting that people should use psychedelics to correct their addictions. And the reality is that psychedelics are like 8 times as effective as AA. So the people that are running people out of meetings are really, it's one of those the road to hell is paved with good intentions kind of scenarios. Um, they're really just fucking people over and doing a lot of damage by their ignorance and acting out of ignorance. Um, that may have been going a little overboard for addressing maybe excessive cannabis use, but really, in my opinion, excessive cannabis use can be just as destructive as anything else. And I think the subtle nature of the negative impact is it can potentially really be a driving force in the damage that it does, because it's easier to convince yourself that nothing is wrong, uh, because you're not necessarily out getting into like real serious trouble. But if your productivity is compromised, I think it's really easy for potheads to sustain illusions and delusions about stuff. Um, I know that actually it's part of the nature of the thing. So yeah, you just have to have other activities that give you a dopamine fix. You have to find things that you enjoy and do them. Go back to the beginning of this live stream and watch it all. And Yeah, I mean that's what happens. There's an old African proverb that people that speak the truth have few friends, and unfortunately, anchoring bias. Um, how do you say this? Like, and this is something that really, if you understand it, you can understand a lot of the weird shit we're seeing in the world that doesn't really make sense uh, on a surface level. Um, and uh, basically, it is that anchoring bias, cognitive dissonance, selective perception, all of these biases are deeply connected to our survival instincts, which is also, the survival instinct is tied up in our ego. Um, so when someone has anchoring bias, and that means that the information they received at first has more weight, even if it doesn't make sense. You see that with the narrative, right? I can't even say the word without risking my channel getting deleted. But you see, when new information comes out that contradicts the old information, people will. It's as if it's invisible. And if you're a person that is bringing new information to light, a lot of times you'll get a very, very negative response. And that is the key to understanding this, is to understand that these cognitive dissonance and all of these biases are really, really deeply connected to our survival instincts and our ego. And so whenever you confront any of this cognitive dissonance in people, their fight or flight response is triggered. And so that's why, when you present something to people on social media that they don't like, they tend to just delete you. Um, it's and it's remarkable. It can be people that you've known for decades, family members, But once you have confronted them on one of these issues, the response can be really shocking, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. Um, my thoughts on Amanita are basically irrelevant because I've never really tried it. And I don't like to speak about things of which I have no actual experience. If this practice was adopted in mass, our world would be a much better place, because people speaking on things they don't actually have any real knowledge about is one of the biggest problems that we face um, on the globe, I think. But in general, I do know that there are some dangers, like repetitive muscle syndrome, where you will get stuck in a loop. But whereas LSD and mescaline and these sort of things are sort of cerebral experiences, and so the loops that you get stuck in tend to be psychological, right? I've gotten stuck in loops where I'm just repeating like certain words, and I even have loops that will come back. Like, the next time I get stuck in a loop, it's got the same theme, and of course, it represents some sort of unprocessed information or experiences or something that just needs to get worked through that hasn't been worked through. But with Amanita, it's physical. And so you can get stuck in a loop of repetitive motions that are injuring you, and you'll just continue to do it. You cannot stop. You can break bones. And still, there was Andrew Weil, the naturopathic MD, found some guy at Cougar Hot Springs that was like leaping off of a bridge and like breaking bones and climbing up and throwing himself off over and over and over again because he had gotten stuck in one of these loops. So Amanita is definitely something to be very careful with. Of course, you have to sun dry it to convert. I can't remember whether it's ibutenic acid into muscimol or the other way around. But the more toxic and less psychoactive of the two compounds is converted by sun drying. So that is essential to make it safe. But I know a lot of people have, claim to experience alleviation of depression and a lot of positive effects. Personally, I don't see any reason to put your liver through the extra work and to risk ingesting a fairly unpredictable and dangerous compound when you could just take psilocybin or ayahuasca or a whole host of other things that are less toxic and more predictable. That's why I've never tried it. I don't see any reason. to mess around with it. It's not even really a psychedelic. It's what is the word? Disassociative, or a deliriant, actually, a deliriant. And that doesn't even sound good, when you say like, oh yeah, I'm going to take this deliriant. I don't, for what? But then again, also, I think that as Caucasians, we have a sort of ancestral connection to Amanita muscaria, depending on where you're from. And so, just in the same way that I think a lot of people in South America that are mestizos, which, a mestizo is basically a Spanish and indigenous cross, I guess, or indigenous and whatever, really. A lot of mestizo people are rediscovering their ancestral roots through ayahuasca. For Caucasians, it would be plants like mandrake and Amanita muscaria and deadly nightshade, all this sort of stuff. And I kind of wish that our ancestral plant medicine heritage was a little bit less dangerous and toxic, but it is what it is. I mean, and I do know people that are, feeling like they want that to have some kind of connection with their ancestral medicine, and so they're eating Amanita muscaria or maybe drinking mandrake, henbane. Henbane's more common, I think, because I think it's less dangerous than some of the other Solanaceae plants. Okay, so is that it? Do we have any more questions? Have you guys all hit the like button? Sent me millions of dollars on PayPal. I know you're out there, Elon. Hook a brother up. I'll build rockets too. Tomorrow, actually, speaking of PayPal, I'm gonna do a music marathon. I'm gonna hook the good microphone up and get some backing tracks together and take requests, and I'll have both acoustic and electric. And I'm actually going to start at like 1 or 2 o'clock, and every time the batteries run out, I'll switch cameras, devices, because I'm in fundraising mode. Speaking of, true will and the rediscovery and the importance of that for myself, I realized that I need to be back in the United States playing in a band. I'm not really going to be happy and complete, and I'm also kind of full of shit because, it is true that my ultimate true will is to spread this type of consciousness, and I'm certainly doing that here, facilitating ayahuasca and doing these live streams and stuff. But you guys see that vampire bat flying around, whipping around my head every couple of minutes? But yeah, I'm not actually doing what I would do under, if I was truly autonomous and living in accordance with my true will. I would be in the United States playing in a band. And so now my goal is to go back after we wrap up the season here, and it's gonna take a ton of fucking money. So yeah, you guys are gonna see me just cranking out content. I'm working on a course. We're doing these retreats to hopefully get there I'm hoping by winter, to re-enter the United States. I'll be looking for opportunities there, especially if you're in California. Send me an email. If you think you can put together ayahuasca ceremonies or whatever, I'm open to talk about just about anything. So yeah, that's like my big mission right now, is to figure out how I can maintain my freedom and autonomy in the United States, where the overhead is going to be way higher. And also, when I left the United States, I think I had some sort of breakdown, a momentary lapse of reason, and I just walked away from everything. I really had this moment of like pain today, thinking about my music collection, sheet music. I had thousands of pages of sheet music, books, huge collection of amazing books, my guitar, my $3,000 Mesa Boogie amplifier, I just left. And so I have to also get gear again and build everything from the ground up. Um, but that's exactly what the fuck I'm gonna do. So watch me until they stop me, bloody murder me, or pop me. Thank you so much, Misty. We really appreciate it, man. It's been a really difficult couple of months, to be perfectly honest. Which was really a surprise because we started out really well and really strong. And then, I'm sure you guys, I've mentioned the protest plenty, but the timing was just a complete disaster. And really have not really found our stride again yet. Although, it always changes. Um, and the universe has never failed to create some kind of last minute miracle for me when I need it. So I don't worry too much. Yeah, Misty, that's the feeling I get, and I have a genius bass player. The guy's literally a savant. He, and he wouldn't mind me saying this because it's just is, he is basically, he'll be 12 or 13 years old mentally for the rest of his life without question. But he is, there's certainly no one that's ever lived that's better. Let's put it that way. So, and he's been bugging me lately. Where you at? Aren't we going to still do this music project? I've been down here for 5 years. And, from his point of view, I just suddenly left. And it was the most insane thing. We were Jay Lane, who is now playing with Dead and Company. We had done a show with him right before I left. Things were really moving. Like, we got out of my car one day, and there was a big crowd of people. They all started cheering. So for me to just leave in the middle of that it was crazy. But my mom committed suicide. And I think, some of the circumstances around it were really bad. I think I just short-circuited, which really surprises me. I've always thought of myself as sort of invincible and almost emotionless, really, in a lot of ways, certainly very stoic. So to look back and realize that I had been derailed by something was, even the suicide of my mother, I would think that I would just shrug anything and everything off. But guess that's not realistic. So anyways, yeah, that's my plan, man. Tomorrow I'm gonna play all day. I'm gonna put out a video, monkeys and shit, and I appreciate all you guys that have supported us all of this time, because this our supporters through YouTube and the people that have come out here to visit us, that have been pretty much our entire livelihood and support network. And I think to start a YouTube channel in 2019, I think, and actually support myself more or less, a little bit wobbly, but more or less, it was pretty amazing and encouraging, especially considering that I've been demonetized and that we know that the algorithm is burying the content, and also even people whose accounts are associated with mine are affected. So it's really difficult for me to promote videos. I can't, Facebook ads doesn't work very well for me. So, we really have a lot working against us, and we're still managing to sort of succeed. So despite the uneven success, it still feels like success, because there have been so many variables that have just randomly come out, like COVID locking us down at a critical time. There's been a lot of stuff. The protests, this isn't the first one. Last year we were also, so we had the lockdowns, and then we also had the indigenous lockdowns, right? The indigenous literally block off all of the traffic in the entire country when they do these protests. So anyways, guys, it's about 10 o'clock, and my face is frozen, which tells me that my camera's dying. Bloop. So, especially considering that my camera battery is about to go, appreciate you guys, and I will see probably some of you, hopefully all of you, tomorrow.